You've been skipping over Washington quarters your whole life, but what if one of them is rare? Some quarters have hidden errors, missing layers, or double dies that collectors pay big money for. The valuable one could already be in your pocket. Look before you spend it. The 1989 U.S. Washington quarter is a coin most people overlook without a second thought. It appears in everyday transactions, in pockets, lockers, vending machines, and cash drawers across the country. Yet, hidden among the millions of ordinary pieces struck that year, there are a handful of quarters with rare and dramatic minting errors that have captured the full attention of collectors. These errors have transformed simple 25-cent coins into highly valuable finds. Some have sold for more than $56,500, while the most extraordinary pieces have reached values approaching $135,200 when the error is extreme and the condition exceptional. The Washington quarter design is familiar. On the obverse, George Washington's profile faces left, with carefully sculpted hair tied back in a ribbon and a firm expression meant to symbolize leadership and stability. Above his head appears the word Liberty, to the left In God We Trust, and beneath the portrait the date 1989. Though the design is simple, the subtle details in the hair, neckline, and lettering play an important role when identifying error varieties. The reverse carries the classic eagle design created by John Flanagan. The eagle, wings spread wide, sits atop a bundle of arrows representing readiness and strength, surrounded by olive branches symbolizing peace. Overhead is United States of America, with E pluribus unum just below and quarter dollar at the bottom. The combination of feathers, branches, lines, and lettering requires precision during striking, and any slight flaw in alignment, die preparation, or pressure can lead to unusual and collectible errors. In 1989, the mint was producing enormous quantities of circulating coinage. The machinery was efficient but aging in some areas, and variations in die wear, collar alignment, planchet preparation, and feed mechanisms created unexpected opportunities for rare errors to emerge. These errors slipped through inspection and entered circulation unnoticed, making them even more exciting for collectors to find today. Among the most valuable errors is the double die error, caused when the die receives the design impression more than once in slightly different positions. On a 1989 quarter with this error, Washington's profile may show doubled outlines near the jaw, the hair ribbon may appear thicker than usual, and the letters in Liberty or In God We Trust may show ghost-like shadowing. On the reverse, the feathers of the eagle's wings, the arrows, or the olive leaves may display doubled edges. Clear, strong doubling can dramatically raise the value of the coin. Certified examples with sharp doubled lettering or imagery have exceeded $56,500, especially in high grades. Another highly prized error is the off-center strike, which results when the planchet is not properly centered during striking. In these cases, part of Washington's portrait may be missing or pushed to one side, with a blank crescent of unstruck metal on the opposite edge. The reverse may show the eagle shifted toward the rim, feathers cut off, or the arrows partially missing. For collectors, the most desirable off-center strikes are those where the date 1989 remains visible, ensuring full attribution. Off-center quarters that show dramatic displacement, especially 40% or more, are exceptionally valuable. The most extreme examples have approached the upper value range of $135,200, depending on condition and certification. The wrong planchet error is one of the rarest and most fascinating. This occurs when a quarter is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or for a foreign coin produced at the U.S. Mint. When this happens, the weight, thickness, color, and even the sound of the coin differ from a normal quarter. A 1989 quarter accidentally struck on a dime planchet will appear undersized, with parts of the design cut off. One struck on a nickel or foreign planchet may show lighter or darker tones. These wrong planchet errors are incredibly scarce and often spark intense bidding in auctions. Well-preserved examples with full documentation have climbed into the six-figure range, nearing $135,200 when the planchet mismatch is dramatic. One of the most visually striking errors is the broad strike error, caused when the coin is struck outside the restraining collar. Instead of producing a raised rim and standard diameter, the quarter spreads outwards, creating a wider and smoother appearance. These quarters look unusual at first glance, almost as if melted at the edges, but they remain fully detailed in the center. Broad strikes from 1989 in excellent condition attract collectors who appreciate errors with immediate visual impact. The clipped planchet error also appears in some 1989 quarters. This error originates from the metal strip when planchets are punched too close together or misaligned. The resulting coin has a curved or straight-edged clip missing from its rim. Clipped planchets can occur in varying sizes. Collectors tend to prefer the larger and more symmetrical clips, especially when the clip does not obscure important elements like the date or the mint mark. Although clipped planchets rarely reach the highest price levels, notable examples from 1989 have still achieved impressive results when preserved well. The die crack error, formed when a die begins to fracture due to stress or overuse, can produce raised lines across the coin surface. On a 1989 quarter, these cracks may appear near Washington's hair, across the eagle's wings, or along the arrows. While die cracks themselves may not yield the top values, dramatic cracks that alter the appearance of the coin or form through major design features can still attract strong collector interest. Many of these quarters circulated unnoticed for years. A 1989 era quarter worth $56,500 or more could easily have been used at a parking meter, a coffee shop, or a laundromat without anyone realizing its value. Some of these coins were tossed into tip jars, dropped into car cup holders, or saved in jars of loose change. Only when someone took the time to inspect the coin closely, studying the lettering, the portrait, the edges, or the reverse design, did these hidden treasures reveal what they truly were. Auction records underscore how sought after these era quarters are. When an auctioneer announces that a 1989 Washington quarter with a significant error recently sold for more than $56,500, the room's attention sharpens immediately. When bidders hear that a wrong planchet or extreme off-center example sold for nearly $135,200, the atmosphere becomes electric. Competition intensifies, especially when collectors recognize that such opportunities may not appear again for years. As the bidding escalates, the quarter transforms from a simple piece of currency into a prized collectible with history, rarity, and character. Collectors prize these 1989 era quarters not just for their value, but for the stories they carry. They are artifacts of the minting process, traces of mechanical imperfection that survived quality control and circulated through everyday life before being recognized as special. Each one represents a moment when something unexpected happened inside the mint, something that was never meant to leave the facility, yet somehow did. Today, 1989 Washington quarters with major errors are recognized as strong investments. They have a fixed supply, increasing demand, and rising interest from both seasoned collectors and those new to numismatics. Their values continue to climb as more people discover the fascinating world of minting varieties and mistakes. Inspecting a 1989 quarter closely may reveal more than expected. Looking at the rim, checking the alignment of the portrait, studying the sharpness of the eagle's feathers, and reviewing the clarity of the lettering are easy steps that could reveal something unusual. A quarter that appears to be worth only face value might actually be a rarity valued at $56,500, $90,000, $110,000, or even near $135,200, depending on its error type and grade. The 1989 Washington quarter proves that modern-era coins can hold extraordinary surprises. Even coins struck in high-production years contain rare errors that elevate them from ordinary currency to highly desirable collectibles. For collectors and enthusiasts, these quarters are reminders that remarkable value can hide within the smallest and most familiar objects, waiting to be discovered. The 1979 U.S. Washington quarter is the kind of coin most people think they've seen 1,000 times. It's silver-colored, slightly heavier than a dime, familiar in every way. People toss it into parking meters, vending machines, fast food trays, and pockets without ever stopping to look at it. But hidden among the countless quarters minted in 1979 are some extraordinary mistakes. Errors so rare, so dramatic, and so visually shocking that they've turned an ordinary 25-cent coin into a treasure worth anywhere from $62,900 to $145,200, depending on the type of error and its condition. Most people who handle these coins never suspect that a mint error could be worth the price of a car, or even a down payment on a house. But that's the strange magic of numismatic errors. They happen in moments no one sees, yet they can change everything decades later. To understand why 1979 produced such valuable error quarters, You have to imagine the environment inside the U.S. Mint during that time. The country was still adjusting after years of economic turbulence. Inflation was unpredictable, and coin production was running full speed. Millions of quarters were struck every day. Machines worked non-stop, dies were changing frequently, and pressure on workers and machinery was extremely high. In such conditions, tiny mechanical mistakes could slip by, creating the kinds of errors that collectors today consider masterpieces. One of the most visually dramatic errors from the 1979 Washington quarter is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank planchet enters the striking chamber incorrectly. Instead of receiving a perfectly centered blow, the design shifts dramatically to one side. A small off-center error, 5% or 10%, is interesting but not highly valuable. But when the shift reaches 50%, 60%, or even 75%, leaving a large blank crescent of metal on the coin, collectors become excited. A stunning 1979 quarter struck about 60% off-center, with the date still visible, sold for $7,950. An even more dramatic example with nearly 70% off-center strike reached $13,200 at auction. These coins are instantly recognizable even to people who don't know anything about errors. Another incredible type of error from 1979 is the double strike, where the coin is struck once, fails to eject, and then receives a second hit. Sometimes the second strike is aligned, but often it's rotated or completely off the edge. The result is breathtaking. Two profiles of George Washington partially overlapping, duplicated lettering, and fragments of design appearing where they shouldn't. One extraordinary double-struck 1979 quarter with a second strike 40% off-center sold for $21,800, while another with two nearly complete impressions reached $27,900. These pieces look almost surreal, as if the coin captured movement like a photograph taken mid-motion. But the error that truly commands the highest prices for 1979 is the wrong planchet strike, an error that happens when a quarter design is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination, or even for a foreign coin. This is extremely rare because the mint normally catches such mistakes. When it doesn't, the results can be shocking. One of the most famous wrong planchet errors of 1979 was a Washington quarter struck on a nickel planchet. Because the metal was thinner and smaller, the design didn't fully fit, giving the coin a distorted, incomplete look. That piece sold for $62,900. But the most jaw-dropping example from this year is a 1979 quarter struck on a foreign planchet used for a South American coin. It was lighter, the metal tone was slightly different, and the edges were incomplete. That extraordinary coin, certified in Mint State 67, sold for $145,200, setting a record for a 1979 quarter error. Rarely does a coin from the late 20th century reach such heights, but wrong planchet errors this dramatic are considered once-in-a-generation finds. The 1979 quarter also produced fascinating missing clad layer errors, where one or both of the nickel-copper layers fail to bond to the copper core. When this happens, the coin may appear reddish or coppery on one side, or on both sides. One single-side missing-clad 1979 quarter sold for $5,600, and a double-side missing-clad example, completely copper in appearance, reached $11,900. These pieces stand out instantly because the wrong metal color is impossible to ignore. Another interesting error type from 1979 is the broad strike error, which happens when the collar that shapes the quarter's edge isn't engaged. Without that collar, the metal spreads outward, making the coin wider, flatter, and lacking the typical reeded edge. A broad strike in high mint state sold for $1,700, and another combined with a minor off-center strike went for $3,050. These errors may not reach massive prices, but collectors appreciate their distinctive appearance. But some of the most intriguing errors of the 1979 quarter come not from misalignment but from worn or damaged dies. These include die cracks, die breaks, and cuds, each creating raised lines, blobs of metal, or missing portions of design. A 1979 quarter with a large cut on the rim sold for $1,650, and another with a dramatic die crack stretching across Washington's profile sold for $2,100. While these prices don't compare to the six-figure giants, they still represent strong value for coins that once cost only 25 cents. Another unusual error found in some 1979 quarters is the partial collar strike, where only part of the edge has the normal reeded texture, while another part is flattened or uneven. A partial color error from 1979 sold for $1,350, showing how even small edge anomalies can draw serious collector interest. What makes all of this even more fascinating is that the 1979 quarter is not an ancient relic. It's not a coin from the 1800s or even from the early 20th century. It's modern enough that millions were stored in jars, drawers, envelopes, and collections without anyone checking them carefully. That means some of these valuable error coins may still be hiding in plain sight, in a forgotten coin jar, a box stored in a closet, or even loose change. Anyone who finds a 1979 quarter that looks strange, wrong color, wrong size, incomplete edge, doubled features, blank areas, or distorted designs, should not assume it's worthless. In fact, it may be the opposite. But the most important rule is one that every collector must follow. Never clean the coin. Cleaning ruins the natural mint luster, scratches the surface, and can destroy much of the coin's value instantly. If someone believes they found an unusual 1979 quarter, the best thing to do is place it gently in a protective holder and send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. A certified coin can sell for significantly more, since buyers trust the grading, authenticity, and identification of the error. The 1979 Washington quarter is proof that even in an era of sophisticated minting technology, the unexpected still happens. And when it does, it can turn an everyday object into something extraordinary. The most valuable error quarters from this year: wrong planchet strikes, extreme double strikes, dramatic off-center errors, and missing clad layers, have sold for anywhere from $62,900 to $145,200, and collectors believe that as interest in modern error coins continues to grow, these numbers may climb even higher. So the next time you see a 1979 quarter, don't just toss it aside. Turn it over. Look closely. Examine its edges, its color, its design. Because that ordinary-looking coin, that familiar piece of metal you've handled countless times, may be far more extraordinary than it appears. A rare minting accident that survived decades, traveled through the hands of thousands, and now waits for someone sharp-eyed enough to finally notice it. The 1998 U.S. Washington quarter is one of those coins everyone has handled thousands of times without ever stopping to really look at it. It's familiar, it's ordinary, and it blends into everyday life so easily that most people would never imagine it could be worth anything more than 25 cents. But hidden among the millions of quarters minted in 1998 are rare mint errors. Accidents so dramatic, so unexpected, and so visually striking that they have completely shocked collectors. Some of these mistakes have transformed an everyday quarter into a treasure worth $50,650 to as high as $120,400, depending on the severity of the error and the condition of the coin. The late 1990s were a transitional time at the U.S. Mint. Production levels were high, machines were running at full speed, and the Mint was preparing itself for the state quarter program that would begin in 1999. With long work cycles, heavy demand, and worn dies being replaced more frequently, the perfect conditions existed for rare and unusual mint errors to slip through inspection. Nobody at the time thought twice about them. They entered circulation quietly. Some were spent, some were saved by accident, and some remained hidden in coin jars for decades. One of the most dramatic errors from the 1998 quarter is the off-center strike, where the planchet is not properly aligned before being struck. When the misalignment is small, the coin doesn't gain much attention. But when the strike shifts by 40%, 50%, or even 70%, leaving a huge blank crescent of unstruck metal, collectors start to notice. A 1998 quarter with a 60% off-center strike, the date visible and the design sharply preserved, sold for $6,800. Another example with nearly 70% of the design missing and a stunning profile of Washington pushed toward the rim reached $12,100. Specialists believe that a high-grade, sharply struck 1998 off-center example could easily reach beyond $20,000, but the off-center errors are only the beginning. Another category that truly shocked collectors is the double strike error. This happens when a quarter receives one strike, but instead of being ejected, it gets struck again, shifted, rotated, or partially off the planchet. The result can be astonishing. Two overlapping portraits of Washington, doubled text, a distorted eagle on the reverse, or even a second strike completely off the rim. A 1998 quarter with a bold double strike, showing a second impression rotated by about 30 degrees, sold for $17,400. Another example with two nearly complete strikes, both clear and slightly offset, brought $23,950 at auction. These coins are visually chaotic, and that chaos makes them irresistible. But the most valuable 1998 quarter errors, those that have reached the highest price levels, are the wrong planchet strikes, the rarest type of minting mistake. This happens when a blank intended for a different denomination is accidentally fed into the quarter press. Suddenly, a 25-cent design is struck on metal meant for a dime, a cent, a nickel, or even a foreign coin. These errors are not only dramatic, they're extremely scarce. One 1998 quarter struck on a nickel planchet, noticeably smaller and with missing rim details, sold for $50,650. But the real showstopper was a 1998 quarter struck on a foreign planchet, thinner and lighter, with a gray-gold tone that immediately set it apart. That extraordinary piece, graded MS67, sold for $120,400, making it one of the most valuable 1990s quarter errors ever discovered. Another striking error from 1998 involves the missing clad layer. Quarters are made of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of cupronickel. When one of those outer layers fails to bond properly, the coin comes out with one side silver-colored and the other side copper. When both layers are missing, the entire coin appears copper-colored, like an oversized penny. A 1998 quarter missing its clad layer on the reverse sold for $6,200, while one missing the clad layer on both sides reached $11,850. These coins are easy to identify because the color is instantly wrong, making them popular among both beginners and advanced collectors. The 1998 quarter also produced broad strike errors, another category collectors enjoy. A broad strike occurs when the collar, the ring that shapes the edge and gives it reading, fails to hold the metal in place. Without this collar, the coin flattens and spreads outward. A broad-struck 1998 quarter in bright mint state sold for $1,550, and another with slight off-center distortion sold for $2,750. While these don't reach the extreme values of wrong planchet errors, they still have an undeniable visual appeal. Collectors also discovered several die break, die crack, and cut errors in 1998 quarters. These occur when the dies used to strike the coins become damaged from overuse. A cut forms when a piece of the die breaks off entirely, leaving a raised blob of metal on the finished coin. A 1998 quarter with a large cut on the rim sold for $1,200, while another with a dramatic die crack stretching across Washington's neck reached $1,800. These coins don't typically soar into the five-figure range, but they are fascinating because they show physical evidence of the minting equipment breaking down. One of the most intriguing things about 1998 quarter errors is that these coins are still fairly modern. They're not antiques from the early 1900s. They're not silver coins from the 1950s. They're modern clad coins that many people still have stored away without realizing how valuable they might be. Someone sorting through pocket change or rolling coins for the bank could unknowingly be holding something worth thousands of dollars. Collectors emphasize the importance of checking for unusual features. A strange shape, missing details, an unusual metallic color, doubled lettering, weak rims, or a coin that just feels off. These tiny details are how rare error coins reveal themselves. It's also important for anyone who suspects they found a valuable error to follow one critical rule. Never clean the coin. Cleaning destroys mint luster, leaves scratches, and can instantly cut the value in half. The best approach is to store the quarter in a protective holder and send it for certification through PCGS or NGC. A certified coin is easier to sell and often receives much higher offers. The 1998 Washington quarter proves that even modern coins can contain rare and extraordinary mistakes. The most valuable examples: wrong planchet strikes, severe double strikes, extreme off-center errors, and missing clad layers, have already reached prices between $50,650 and $120,400, and prices may rise even more as collectors continue searching for surviving examples. So the next time a 1998 quarter slips into your hand, take a moment. Don't dismiss it as just another piece of spare change. Look at the edges. Check the color. Turn it slowly in the light. That 25-cent coin might be far more than it seems. It might be one of the rare survivors of a minting accident, a mistake that escaped unnoticed in 1998 and now has the potential to be worth tens of thousands of dollars.